welcome back to another episode of Barn Table Talks. I'm your host, Benji Bonnet, here with my co-host, Travis Corman, and we have two guests on today. We have Roy Johnson and Brittany Shumate. How are you guys doing today?
Doing good.
Good?
Happy Thursday.
There we go. That's
Thursday's always good. So, Roy, do you want to give us a little bit of a background just so they know a general description? Or
I'm 6'1", about 178.
NFL draft description right there.
Roy Johnson. I'm a high school agriculture teacher and FFA advisor at East Central High School in St. Leon, Indiana. Just finished my 29th year of teaching agriculture here in the state of Indiana. So,
Awesome.
Yep.
Awesome.
That's impressive, and what a change in that time you've seen.
95, I started as a 22-year-old.
Know-it-all?
Yeah, right?
I was at that age.
Yeah. Green behind the ears, and to this past year, it's been a ride. So I think I've got less years left than what I've got in. So
Awesome.
On the downhill run.
I hope,
Yeah.
but still enjoy it mostly.
And Brittany, you want to give us a little bit of intro about you? I know you just came and started working with us here recently.
Sure. So I started here mid-April of this year, fresh out of the Coast Guard, doing a SkillBridge internship program where still active duty military, but transitioning, and Travis took a chance on me, I guess, saw something in me to come here and learn. So
Awesome.
Yeah, been worth it.
Yeah, that's good.
Brittany's fun to have around. She got a good positive attitude, and you enjoy it. I mean, we both do. So.
Yeah. Well, before we get too deep into things, we're gonna start it off. We usually start each episode with a little question of the day, just to kind of get warmed up with things. So I'm gonna reuse one we've previously used, but I really like this one. If you could go to a vacation spot anywhere in the world, where would it be and why? And Roy, you can start us off if that's okay.
I've just a vacation spot. So I didn't leave the country until I got married back in 2018. Spent 2 weeks in Ireland and Scotland, and just got back from Germany and Scotland. Either Ireland or Scotland. I mean, I haven't tripped to any tropical locales or anything like that, but the both of those countries, the people, I think part of your experience abroad is the people you meet, and beautiful people, kind people, and my wife and I have just had a beautiful time there. So if I were to do it again, yeah, probably either one of those two.
That's awesome. Yeah. That's a good one. Brittany?
when I was in college, I was supposed to take a trip to Costa Rica. I was an environmental science major, and it fell through. So I think if I could go anywhere, it would be to Costa Rica. One, for the fresh coffee, because I love caffeine. And two, just to see the jungle and the life that's out there.
I heard Belize. So my dad and brother, Dusty, they went to Belize, and they said they really liked it down there. So it may be similar to Costa Rica. What about you, Benji?
Well, that's what you were telling me when we were on vacation. You said you got to go to Belize. I thought it would be Mexico, but I was like, yeah, I want some super blue water and some jungle stuff. And yeah, I don't know. That sounds pretty cool. I'm going to go with Belize. That's something I would definitely love to do.
It's a little less traveled than your Mexico route down there. I think there's less people and a little more remote and stuff.
So I think I'd like that. But Travis, where are you going?
Oh my goodness. Where I would go and where my family would go would be two different things. I think there's two different interests there.
Fair point.
I think that's fair. I think everybody can probably say that there's a personal interest and there's probably a family interest if that's involved type thing. I like remote. I like myself. I could go sit on top of any mountain. Good weather. I don't want to be cold. I'm not a cold person, so give me 70s. I'm good.
Good temps.
Yeah. So anywhere like that. We did just get back from over there in Europe, and that was really neat. I agree with Roy on it's about the people you meet and the experiences you have. You go to a city, and you can spin me around 3 times and say you're in Chicago. I wouldn't know if I'm in New York, Chicago. They're all going to look similar. There's a lot of people and stuff, but I think it's what you make of it. And we had an opportunity to go out in France to this little winery that was out there, and it was just a husband and wife, and that's what made a big portion of the trip for me was we got to sit down. Our kids, they started playing with their kids. They couldn't speak English and we couldn't speak French.
You guys used Google Translate the whole time, didn't you?
Google Translate
the entire
whole time. But I bet we were there for an hour and a half, and we were laughing and we were having a good time, even though we couldn't directly, communicate with them. Mm-hmm. It was a good time. It was a good time, and that was neat because I got to experience a piece of their lifestyle and see how their culture influenced their life in that part of the world. So I like vacations like that where I can, I don't have to go see something fancy. We didn't go to Paris or anything like that. I don't have much interest in seeing the Eiffel Tower. Those things don't interest me. So I think more of the, not necessarily alone, but less people, less drawn to attractions.
More natural culture.
I would like to get to Tahiti, to Australia, New Zealand. I would like to get down there, but those are long flights, and I don't know if I'm ready for them yet. So yeah, and I don't know if my pocketbook's ready for it yet either. So that's another
Fair
thing.
point. Yeah.
So yeah. But.
Cool. That's awesome. Well, Roy, you kind of want to give us a little bit of a background on your agricultural, I'll call it a journey, how you kind of got into ag, based on your teaching right now and your advisory position in the FFA.
I grew up in Dearborn County,
Okay.
a little town called Dover, about 15 minutes north of Lawrenceburg.
Mm-hmm.
We had about 110, 120 acre farm. Youngest of 5 brothers.
Oh, wow.
There's Rick, Roger, Ralph, Ray, and Roy. So right now, I don't know how anybody remembers that as far as my parents. My parents are still around. They're both in their 90s, and usually I get called 4 of the names before they remember it's me. But we raised beef cattle, small herd of beef cattle. We baled a lot of hay. The ground where we're at is, and Brittany can attest to this, it's nothing but hills where we're at. So if you flattened it out, 110 acres is probably about 250. Baled a lot of hay for the cattle. We'd cut our own firewood, had a huge garden. Mom would do a lot of the canning and freezing and all that stuff. And I thought, we were pretty self-sufficient on our small farm as we grew up, and I wouldn't trade that upbringing for anything. Mm-hmm. And as a young kid, I was never into sports. I liked watching sports more than I thought I could play them, so I was never into sports. But the thing I looked forward to most growing up was being able to join 4-H.
Gotcha.
And I remember that kind of my 4th grade year. I remember in 1st grade, I don't know what I can't remember the exact question my teacher asked, but probably something like what you wanted to do. And I was like, I want to show cattle at the Dearborn County Fair. And so I, got into 4-H, was a member of 4-H for 10 years, exhibited, cattle and goats and chickens and rabbits and that kind of thing. So that was always the highlight of the summer. And then once I got into 8th grade, I was finally able to take an agriculture class in school. And then throughout high school was a member of FFA for all of those years.
Was that East Central then?
East Central,
okay.
yes. Yeah.
Okay. Gotcha. I know where Dover's at. I just wasn't sure the school lines down there.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
So we're East Central, both East Central graduates here.
Now the size of East Central, as far as per class, how large is East Central now?
Total grades 9 through 12, I can never keep it straight, but it's maybe 1350.
Okay.
And I think probably since 2009, it was growing really, really fast because you would get a lot of move-ins from the west side of Cincinnati and a lot of subdivisions and that kind of thing. Where I think it was probably projected to be a lot bigger by this time, but I think, remember, if the recession kind of in 2009 slowed the enrollment a little bit, but with open enrollment, I think it's kind of back up to where it's always been. I think my graduating class in 1991 was maybe 900, or not graduating class, but enrollment was about 900 for 9 through 12. So, yeah.
It's always been a larger, so I graduated from Greensburg here. And it's always been a larger school than Greensburg is. And it's always been a thorn because they play in sports, quite often. They never beat East Central. I don't know if they've ever had.
Basketball, you guys usually are pretty good. Football,
No, they got bigger kids down there. They throw more hay bales.
They don't feed them as much corn, right, down in East Central or something. But yeah. And I had two good ag teachers, Vernon Conrady and Glenn Wright, as a high school student, and I know I think I always wanted to do something in agriculture, and they encouraged me to check out Purdue. And to this day, I don't know what the conversation was that said maybe you should be an ag teacher came into it. So went to Purdue.
Boiler up.
Boiler up. Yeah.
I do that every episode.
Yeah, that's perfectly fine. Went to Purdue, studied agricultural education, and then my senior year, you do your student teaching. So I actually did my student teaching at North Decatur High School.
Oh, cool.
Spent 10 weeks out there, went through that, got my degree, and then as soon as I started putting out my resume and stuff for teaching high school agriculture, went through a few interviews the summer of '95 and started at Paoli High School, near French Lick, down kind of the, southwest part of the state. Spent 2 years there. Always wanted to kind of get closer to home. So I found a job offer at Jennings County High School in North Vernon. So I spent 7 years there. I loved that place. And then I think one of my ag teachers, who was still at East Central at the time, I think Mr. Conrady called, or maybe my brother was working there as well. Hey, there's an ag teaching opening here at East Central. So I applied and just finished my 20th year at East Central. So,
awesome.
Yeah,
Wow.
Yeah.
Do you know the current ag teacher down there at the high school? Is it Boggs?
At
Jennings County?
Brad Briggs is at the high school. Yeah.
He's in the middle school.
I believe Anita Boggs, is at the
yes.
middle school.
Is
Yeah.
that where we did the?
Yes,
Okay.
Anita. Yeah, so
Yep.
Anita's. We went down there and did a little course with them at one point.
Yeah.
So,
I know Brad Briggs, who's at the high school. He student taught for me down there, and then he replaced me.
and so he's been there since then.
Yeah, he's been there since then. So yeah.
Good.
So what kind of drew you to go towards on that path to be a teacher? I guess what brought you that way?
I don't have a really good story about that. I think my parents kind of looked at it. Are there any jobs doing that? And I had a graduating class at Purdue. I think there was 9 or 10 of us that graduated in ag ed. Knock on wood, I'm the only one left after all that time, for what that's worth. But there were 30-some job openings to teach ag. I thought about like extension work, and that type of thing. Possibly I could use that degree in ag ed to go into sales or marketing. There's tons of opportunities there, and that branch of things. But I thought I'd just give this teaching thing a shot, and for better or worse, mostly better. And, it's
If to be in it this long, there's got to be more better than worse.
I tend to stick with things, and there's probably been opportunities to go elsewhere and do other things, but I guess once I start something, I just kind of hang in there. So
this is, and I'd like Brittany, you to kind of echo in on this, because I think this is a little different for all of us. But you mentioned earlier on your upbringing and how it, you wouldn't trade it for anything, and the brothers growing up on the small farm and all that type of stuff. How much do you think that has? I know it's changed a bunch. How much do you think that has affected the awareness of careers within ag, or the wanting to still be in ag? Because I feel like it's becoming smaller and smaller. It's almost I'm going to call it a closed door, but it's nobody knows about it. And the parts that people do know about is probably the stuff that's not truly the way it's represented. So how much do you think that has affected that? Or maybe you can explain a little bit, and even Brittany, you chime in. I know you. So you were underneath of Roy for Was it 4 years then?
I think 6 years. I started participating in FFA in 7th grade and went from there. So I've known Mr. Johnson for, at least 10 years now.
Gotcha. So how much has it changed since just from what you're seeing now and what we currently do as a role and the upbringings? How much has that really, do you think that's affected careers within ag and people wanting to come back? And
when you have students that come into a program, and one of the first things, especially if I get, a freshman class or even in 8th grade, which I did teach some middle school ag at one point. I don't think I had you as I think I was probably fully at the high school. Define what agriculture is.
well, that's the thing, is it's very narrow-minded to
Exactly.
a lot of us. I'm going to speak for myself. I mean, when I thought about when I was growing up, I was going to be a farmer.
Yeah.
I didn't know much anything else. I thought you had to, it was getting dirty every day out there, and I loved it, absolutely loved it. But you're very unaware of what careers and how many careers there are within this industry.
Define what agriculture is, and you ask students, and you're going to get farming, or you're going to get a tractor, raising crops, growing animals. Obviously, that's the cornerstone of what agriculture is. And then one thing I've had students do, just a general question. Hey, go home. We'll cover careers in our ag courses. That's always an essential part of things. Tell your folks, I want to get a career in agriculture, and see what they say. And we'll do a general discussion, maybe follow up with the kids in a couple days. Well, I don't want you to be a farmer.
See, yeah.
So I know in Decatur County, I think you guys still have a really strong base. But even with that, you still have a lot of students that go through the schools here. I think all 3 of the high schools here in Decatur County. Greensburg now has FFA for the last at least 8 or 10 years. North and South Decatur as well. But still, you have a lot of kids that don't come from a farm.
Right.
And that's not a slap in the face to them, but our job as an educator is to create that awareness. And I'm happy to see when Brittany called me here a month or so ago, that kind of surprised me, like, hey, I'm working for this company in agriculture, because I didn't know exactly what you would probably go into or get, from when you finished up with the Coast Guard. But you have to dispel a lot of myths. FFA talks about over 300 careers in agriculture. We've had some students graduate from East Central. I know are finishing up at Purdue in wildlife right now. Plant science. We've got a few kids that that have went into teaching ag. I can't say that I've graduated too many students over the last 29 years that have become full-time farmers, other than ones that may have been involved with that already.
That's the opportunity that's not, I almost say the opportunity is not really there. It's not really, if you don't have some kind of background or door opening for you, it's financially almost not possible to do that.
I thought when I was in high school as well, before going into Purdue and studying ag, I always had dreams of farming, part-time. I remember as a kid, you'd take a Sunday drive with mom and dad, and they bought the farm that I grew up on back in the, I think, late 50s, after they had gotten married or had been married for a few years, and they mentioned how much they paid for the farm. Or that we would drive around different areas of, Dearborn County. We could have bought that farm, and it was 80 acres or, small farm.
Right.
And, it was, 10,000 or.
Right.
Yikes.
Yeah. So that's entertaining, because we just had one sell right up here in Shelby County the other day. It was a 70-acre tract, 50 acres tillable. So not enough to even start to make a living off of. But if someone wanted to get in, like, I'm gonna start buying ground. It went for like 1.1 million or something like that. Whoever purchased that will never see the return on that ground in their lifetime.
Yeah.
So it's not possible for that avenue. So I think it's important for us to teach awareness of other careers well within and show exposure to them earlier and maybe we can draw an interest back into ag, because I feel like it's kind of fallen off the wayside. And
I think you also see, I think a lot of people will think that, if you don't have 1,000 acres,
Right.
how are you going to do it?
right, I think it's specialized.
I think growing up where I did and where Brittany has, coming back, 70s and 80s, the farms that kids didn't stick around the farm on it, or, they it was a part-time farm. I didn't grow up around many full-time farms, but people would work in Cincinnati and, still farm, raise cattle and maybe a few acres of corn and beans and that kind of thing. But I think has been that trend back to folks that are doing the organic or the small scale or specialized
Freezer beef's been a big thing.
beef.
Right. Yep.
Even with people that move maybe out from the city from Cincinnati, maybe buy 5 acres and hey, we're going to do a huge garden, we're going to raise chickens, we're going to do this or that. How novel of an idea is it for maybe not to make the living from, but
Right.
to make a life with,
supplement and enjoy.
Yeah,
Yes.
grow your own food. Wow, that's a heck of a concept, right? So, but yeah, to get into farming full time as a career, it's cost prohibitive in many cases. But the careers that are out there, and it's my job and other people's jobs and conveying what's available to them. And we also need, as an educator, sometimes you get bogged down in the weeds of teaching kids that we don't make contacts with businesses like yourself to interact. That's one thing, even with working with parents. Do you guys know people that do this? I don't care if it's a welder or somebody who does landscape or tree work or whatever. How can you, in the last 10 years, phone calls to me, hey, do you have a student that would want to do this? I get more and more calls. I know all teachers probably do, get more calls from people that are looking for good help. And so
I think that contrary to there's a stigma out here that there's not people that want to work, and there's not good people anymore. I don't believe that at all. I think that there's a mentality that's shifted, through a couple generations now, to where I think the people are willing to work, but I think it's a different. You get to appreciate, and I think there has to be more freedom. I'm kind of structured, and I'm probably not. I'm more in the probably previous generation mindset where I'll come in, I'll bloody my knuckles because that's the job I've got to do, and that's what I'm going to do. I think that nowadays it's I'm okay working by myself and all day long every day is just fine. I think there's more of a social aspect to the workforce environment now that people enjoy. I think that they want group project scenarios. I think there's a shift, and as an employer, you have to be willing to accept these shifts and adapt your ability to operate off of that somehow. And it's a bad thing because there's still kids out there that are going to be like, hey, you got this one kid that just likes to work by himself and wants to, clean stalls all day, whatever it is, right? Wants to go, pigs are coming in at 4:30 in the morning, 3 in the morning, whatever it is. I need him here with, around the gate board, sorting pigs, whatever it is. And then, he's going to be here till 5 o'clock because he was already here. I don't know if that's fair to do anymore.
So where do you think that shift began?
I don't think that's any one generation. I think it's just over time. I think honestly, it's, and I'm guilty of this. In one sense, you always want life to be simpler for your children than what you had it, right? But yet, I'm not disappointed in how I've turned out. So I don't want life to be simpler because that changes the dynamics of culture and people in general. When life is easy, you don't know how to deal with hard. And I think that, we have done that, just look from World War II all the way on. I mean, this is a This isn't like this last generation XYZ, whatever it is, right? That's not their problem. I mean, we've created a softer society in general, just because we all want it easier for our kids, and we want life to be like, hey, yeah, if you want to take a vacation, go take a vacation. You know, you want a little money in a bank account. It's not paycheck to paycheck. That type of mentality is totally different than what I'm sure my grandparents came up on. Were like, hey, I've got cattle. I have to work every day. It doesn't matter. They have to eat. And I don't care how I feel. I have to provide for that. I don't think that we have that anymore. We have, feeding floors. We have, which we need to have these things because of the sheer volume of production we have to meet. But yet a lot of that's automated. Or we hire that out. We have someone else go and take care of those animals, to that scale. It's not and stuff. So I think that whole thing has shifted. The dynamic of how we've gotten to where we are. Not saying that where we are is bad, but you have to be aware that it's different, and you have to be willing to model that, I think. So I don't know what.
No, that kind of reminds me of that talk we went to, where the guy basically, he explained every person's characteristics, and then he could label it to a certain generation. And I think that kind of tied into how they were brought up, and their lifestyle as they were growing up, which I found very interesting. I thought that was a super unique point of view. But yeah.
And you can probably label it. I mean, you said 29 years, right? Yeah.
29, yep.
29 years. You can probably go back and look at chunks of time where your student base has changed as well. You probably can't define it down to any one individual year saying, man, 2001 to 2002, that was the change. But you can start lumping time frames together.
Yeah.
And normally it happens with things that are going on in the world around, that influence all that as well. Wars, recessions, depressions, whatever it is. I mean, it's all linked together in that stuff. But I never used to take an interest in that stuff, and now it does intrigue me in trying to understand. And understanding people is, I think that's a big part of anything you do. Mm-hmm. But
yeah.
So one of the trainings we go through annually in the Coast Guard is mental resiliency training. And one of the things they always talk about is our society is less resilient than they used to be.
Oh, yeah.
People are softer, as you had said, and they don't hold up to pressure like they used to. So I think it's so important for educators and leaders like you, Travis, to understand how to read people and play out those strengths and weaknesses and figure out how can you grow them maybe to be more resilient and whatnot. But it's all about understanding people.
Mm-hmm. And it's learning self-development and stuff. And I love the fact that, you went to the Coast Guard. You've learned so much about yourself. You were probably a completely different person now and know so much more about yourself now than you did before you went. And all I know I did coming out of the service and stuff like that. I wouldn't change any of it. But yeah, there's days that it was not good, and hard days, but you learn off of that stuff. And I think that's the part majority of the time we miss in society, because everything we do is instant gratification anymore. If you're hungry, you have a burger within 2 minutes, right? You don't have to go wait a half hour for the grill to warm up or the mom to cook it or whatever it is. I mean, it's on the way doing something else, and all that stuff. It's just a society change.
I don't know if as a generation, some people have forgotten how to make a sandwich.
Right, a cold meat sandwich or bologna sandwich.
Lunch meat's in the fridge.
Right, I bet you could put a poll up online saying who's had a bologna sandwich or something like that, and it's yeah. So
yeah, or if you've had to eat a hot dog on a piece of white bread.
If you would have tried to open a store that sells lunch meat sandwiches only, I'm talking like a Subway, Jimmy John's, any of these places. Try to put that into place late 80s, early 90s, they probably would have failed. Yeah. I mean, if you think about it, everybody's like, why would I pay for 2 pieces of bread and some cold meat? That is ridiculous. It takes me 30 seconds. It takes me 30 seconds to throw that together at my house. But yet it's totally different now. I mean, and I think, that all these, that is a company that's adapted to that change in a sense and say, hey, we can. Yeah, I'm guessing their CEO or, whoever their founder was at the time says, yeah, there's no way if I would have started this back then that someone's going to pay me for a cold meat sandwich. you know. So I don't know. I mean, there's always the businesses that want the home cooked meal, because there's always the piece that's not the cleanup. You know, everybody likes to have a good home cooked meal without the whole headache of having to prep it and clean it up. You know, so I think there's that staple on when you go get a meal, but something that you just take out the doors and a piece of paper and you throw away. I mean, there's literally minimal service behind it, period. That's just because we've become a lazier society as a whole. And I'm guilty. I'm not. There's no points. I mean, there's no pointing out. I mean, I'm guilty. I mean, I've bought them, and we all do it. So.